Hi, and welcome to part two of economic theory. You should have watched part one where I gave a general introduction and talked about Adam Smith. I'm now going to go on and talk about the other key individual when it comes to talking about big economic thinkers. So, let me introduce you to Karl Marx, this very good looking, if not a little furry man. Karl Marx lived in the mid 1800s, so a bit of time after Adam Smith. And he lived in Germany for most of his life, and what he saw in Germany really made him sort of criticize capitalism. So when you think of Karl Marx, think of him as a critic, someone who shows the problems, the weaknesses of capitalism. Now I know most of us connect Karl Marx with communism. Now communism is a political theory. What Karl Marx talked about with a command economic system is an economic theory. Um, they do go hand in hand, but I don't want your kind of information about communism to sort of taint what you think about Karl Marx in terms of his economic theory. I'd like you to kind of keep an open mind and consider some of the things he says about capitalism, and if there's some maybe a sliver of truth to what he says, if not everything he says. So let's begin. The first thing you need to understand about his Marxist philosophy is that he has some real key issues with capitalism. But the first thing to talk about is what he thought was important in economics. And what he thinks is the most important aspect of any economy is labor, is the workers. And his argument is simply that an economy exists for the people, for the workers. Okay? That's why we produce goods and services. That's why we have a government. That's what the focus of any economy should be, is the benefit of the workers, the people, the majority, the masses. Okay, that's what he thought. He also believed that capitalism, as it says here, is just sort of part of a natural development of an economy. But it's not the end all be all. It is not the high point of economic development. To give you the analogy, it's like saying that being a high school senior is the end of your development. Okay, now obviously it's a very important point where you're at, but I don't think any of you think that you're going to be the same person in 5 years, or in 10 years, or in 20 years. You're going to have experiences, you're going to do things, you're going to have jobs, some of you are going to have families, things like that. It will change the way you view yourself and life in general. We continue to adapt and change through our lives. And Karl Marx says that's what should and will happen to economies. They're not going to just stay stagnant and just be one type. Capitalism is a form of an economic system, but it again is not the final form. It is just one step along a process. Okay. That being said, the rest of these PowerPoints are going to focus on what Karl Marx sees as being flaws or weaknesses of capitalism. So, his first criticism of capitalism is the argument that the owners of the businesses, which he often refers to as bourgeoisie, and you should know this term. I won't make you spell it, but you should be able to identify it when you see it. He says that these owners are always wanting to make more money. Okay. Now, if you think about what Adam Smith says about capitalism, you know this to be true. I mean, that's self-interest. Everybody wants to make money as much as they can or as much as they want to. Okay. What Karl Marx says is that the owners will take this too far. Okay. Because what they'll do is they'll want to continue to expand the places they sell their products, or they want to expand into new markets, as it says. Because they think if they expand where they sell their product, they'll obviously can sell it to more consumers. If they sell it to more consumers, they make more profit. So they always want to be expanding their businesses. And if you look at this map that I found, this is as it says, shows all the locations of Starbucks across the country. And you will admit, if you think about it, okay, there are Starbucks literally on every corner. I'm sure if you looked at your phone right now and you search for locations of Starbucks, you would find maybe 2 or 3, if not more, within a several mile radius of your house. I know within school, there's probably at least 2 or 3. From my house, I know of 3 or 4. They are literally everywhere. Okay, and I think this highlights that idea that Marx said that, see, these are what companies want to do. They want to keep expanding until there's literally nowhere left to go. And that does seem to be true, and sometimes in capitalism that there's always this sense that you have to do more, you have to sell more, you have to expand your markets to try to make more money. And again, that is driven by profit. It's never enough to have a good year. Okay, you've always got to be improving. Most companies are evaluated in this country based on their quarterly statements or their quarterly earnings. I mean, every basically 3 months, people evaluate how successful a company is. Okay. He also says that because the owners are so greedy, for lack of a better word, is that they'll always want, obviously, that they always want more production, okay, but they want to lower their costs. And what that means is they're going to pay their workers as little as possible. Okay, so they're going to reduce their wages, they're going to try to replace workers with more efficient machines, and it's going to get to the point where workers are making so little money they can barely survive. We call that subsistence living. Okay, and Marx said he felt like he saw this going on in the industrialization of Europe in the 1800s, where these business owners were paying these workers so little money that they could barely survive. And if a worker got hurt or was late, he was thrown out, and obviously there were plenty of workers who were willing to fill those shoes. And so Marx felt like the workers were really suffering tremendously to benefit the owners. And this idea of lowering the wages of the workers and always getting rid of the workers to replace them with someone else will continue on and on and on for not just weeks and months, but years and potentially decades. And he said this system could not continue because, again, workers or labor is the most important aspect of an economy, and that this system is cannot continue forever. It's untenable. So the second issue he has with capitalism is called the issue of specialization. Okay. In a capitalist system, obviously, one of the key components is efficiency, and you get that efficiency from getting workers to do a specific task and do it increasingly faster and more efficiently and thoroughly. Okay, you can see this picture. Everyone's sitting at a station doing one job over and over again. This specifically, the assembly line. But even myself, I'm a specific teacher, not only of social studies but of economics, and I specialize in that. And one day you will have to specialize in a career or a job. It doesn't mean you can't change jobs, but you'll have to specialize. What what Marx said is the problem with this is that if people were so focused on doing one job so well, that there was a loss of sort of what he called creativity. Okay, you couldn't change it or try to tweak it or do something different. You had to do the one motion over and over again. Now, of course, he's talking about assembly line work, like think about putting a car together and that sort of thing. But that's obviously what a lot of people were doing in industrialization in the 1800s. And while this led to mass production of goods at low cost, the workers themselves did not get a lot of satisfaction. They didn't feel like they really contributed. They were just a cog in a wheel. There was no, as it says, emotional satisfaction from their job. It was just a grind. And and I would ask your parents or other people you know about how much they enjoy what they do. There are a lot of people who do enjoy what they do, but there's a lot of people who don't, who feel like, yeah, they're just doing the same thing over and over again, and that kind of job can be really boring. You can be really efficient at it, but there's not a lot of there's not a lot of intrinsic, internal satisfaction from that. You're just doing it for a paycheck. And again, there's nothing wrong with it, but Marx says that's not the way an economy is supposed to work. People are supposed to enjoy their job. They're supposed to feel like they're doing it to benefit the community, the good of the whole group. Okay. What Marx says will begin to happen is that the workers, which he also referred to as the proletariat, and again, recognize the term, you don't need to spell it, they're going to realize that, you know what, they're really being taken advantage of. They're being paid less and less to the point where they can barely survive. They can barely pay their rent, barely put food on the table. They're never getting ahead. And the work they're doing is becoming less and less satisfying. They have to go faster and always do the same thing, and there's no joy. There's no sense of accomplishment coming out of it. And this picture here is from a movie called Office Space. If you have not seen it, you can wait a few years till you start work and you can see it and you can laugh at all the kind of inside jokes it makes about working in a modern day office. But it highlights the fact that there is some certain amount of unsatisfaction that a lot of people have at their jobs because there's just a lot of aspects that are just unpleasant and bring people no joy. Okay. And again, Marx says this cycle of low wages and less workers will repeat again and again and again until there will be a massive and violent revolution. And he's very clear about this. He says that workers will not put up with this forever, and at some point they're going to snap. And as you can see from these pictures, both old and new, the issues of wages and fair employment has been going on in our history and the world's history and will continue to go on. Today people are arguing about what is a fair wage. There are a lot of people who are calling for a 15 an hour minimum wage. That's what they're calling a livable wage. You can see from these other pictures about people picking up rocks, about to become violent, attacking their owners. There's always been this sense of that there's this imbalance between owners and workers, and every once in a while you'll see it sort of bubble up. And this is what said Marx would happen eventually because the workers were being taken advantage of at such an extreme level by their kind of greedy owners. Now, there's a couple other problems he says that go on with capitalism. His third criticism of capitalism is called overproduction and underconsumption. Okay. The first part is overproduction. He says, as we know, the owners always want to sell more because if they sell more, they assume they're going to make more profits. So obviously that's why they demand more and more efficiency out of their workers. Okay, so they can produce higher levels of production, as you see in the picture. The problem is that with businesses producing so much, at some point they're going to produce more than can be consumed. It's literally going to be piling up, like you see in these pictures of cars by the hundreds, if not the thousands, and these just pallets of some sort of product. It says this is what capitalism does. This is what owners do. They always push to produce more and more at high efficiency rates, at low wages. They always just assume that producing more will make them more profit, and that's all they're interested in, to the point where they produce too much stuff. It's wasting resources, and these products will just sit idly by. That is called overproduction. Now the question is why is this overproduction? Well, it ties into the next concept of underconsumption. Okay, underconsumption, as you see here, is this idea that in our economic system, the wealth is not evenly distributed. Meaning that if you look at the triangle up here, during Marx's time, there was a huge group of the population which was poor, which had very little money. Remember, barely making enough money to survive. There really was no middle class to speak of. And then there was a small group on top, which was the super wealthy, the bourgeoisie, the business owners. He said this is a problem. He says that only the bourgeoisie have the money to afford to buy the goods and services. The majority of the people, who are the poor ones, have no money, no extra money to buy all those products that are being produced, whether they're tires or shoes or cars or cups of coffee. None of it, they can't afford any of it because they just have enough money to get through the day, to get through the month. They'll never have enough to go out and buy those products. Okay? And meanwhile, the bourgeoisie, okay, they're buying everything and anything that they want. But at some point, they cannot consume everything that is available. At some point, they literally will have their unlimited wants of certain products at certain times fulfilled. And that's what Marx says is underconsumption. Having this mass amount of production produced, and yet having such a small group of truly wealthy individuals who can really afford to buy it. He says that you cannot continue an economy that way. And I would just ask you to think about, how do most people in this country buy things? Do most people have the cash they need to buy all the products they want? I would say the answer is no. I say most people buy a lot of their products on credit cards, which is basically borrowing money you don't have. I've seen people do it for groceries. Obviously, we do it for homes and cars and big purchases. But more and more people are doing it for everyday things because it allows them to buy more than what they could truly afford. The super rich people, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, they can buy anything that they want because they have basically unlimited amounts of money. Okay. Let me give you one final example. Let's talk about cars as an example, and you could use almost any product. But how much can you really consume when it comes to a car? Here's a picture of a brand new Porsche. Obviously a beautiful car, luxurious, fast, elegant, be a wonderful car. Anybody would love to have this car. Imagine for a moment that you are one of those super rich individuals, being the bourgeoisie. You could buy this car easily, no problem. In fact, you could buy one for every day of the week in a different color. So you would have 7 cars, one for every day. It would be wonderful and awesome. You, in fact, have enough money to consume dozens of these cars. You say one for every day of the month. So therefore, you could literally drive a different car every day, for a month. It would be awesome, be wonderful. Okay. Finally, you could even buy dozens upon dozens. You could buy hundreds of cars, in terms of Porsches. Okay. You, in fact, could buy thousands of Porsches. But realistically, how many Porsches are you going to buy? At some point, your desire for Porsches will be fulfilled. If you buy 49 Porsches, why would you possibly buy the 50th Porsche? At some point, you're going to be satisfied. And that was his argument. That's what was Marx's argument about capitalism. There's too many products and too few people can afford them because the bourgeoisie are too focused on making money at the expense of the workers. And that system cannot continue to function. Okay, we're just about out of time. This is a pretty complicated set of topics, so please feel free to ask questions in class and obviously watch it several times. Have a good day, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.